is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano live on a Friday in July. We are 3 days away from the MLB trade deadline, but Mike Elias is getting his business done early. Mere hours after making a trade of Austin Hayes to the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for reliever Sir Anthony Dominguez and Christian Pache, he makes another one. He gets his starting pitcher in Rays righty Zach Eflin, and I'm going to break it all down here on the Banner Baseball Show. If you are watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, drop a like, drop a comment, and I'll try to get to as many comments as possible. Could be listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. If this is your second Banner Baseball Show viewing of the day, thank you so much, because we went live earlier to break down the Austin Hayes trade, and now I am live to break down the Zach Eflin trade. Let's talk first and foremost about what the Orioles got in 30-year-old righty Zach Eflin. And it's pretty good. It is a guy with a 4.09 ERA in 19 starts, just 7 strikeouts per 9, but a 1.164 whip this season with the Tampa Bay Rays. This is a guy who pitches to soft contact, not a whole lot of strikeouts. He's in the 15th percentile according to StatCast in whiff percentage and just the 24th percentile in strikeout percentage, but he's in the 87th percentile in chase percentage and 99th percentile in walk percentage. So he keeps the ball in the strike zone. He does not have a whole lot of clutter on the base paths. He uses 6 different pitches: a sinker, a cutter, a curveball, a sweeper, a four-seamer, a changeup. He used to have a slider, but that kind of was phased out of his repertoire. He stopped throwing that pitch about a year ago. His fastest pitch is his four-seamer, which averages just 92.6 miles per hour. So he's not a hard thrower, but he gets the ball in the strike zone. His best season of his career came in 2023, which is his first in Tampa Bay, a 3.50 ERA in a career high 177 innings. Somebody who struggled with injuries in the early part of his career, and especially right before he hit free agency. Pitched for the Phillies for 7 years, had a big knee problem that hurt him in the 2022 season, kept him out of action for a while, and made sure that he was in the bullpen in the 2022 Phillies World Series run. So he was not a starter during that run. He hits free agency, and then he signs with the Rays on a 3-year, $40 million deal that is backloaded. So it has $18 million due to him in 2025. Presumably, the Orioles are picking up that tab for 2025, and presumably they're picking up the final 2 months, a prorated deal for the $11 million that is due to him in 2024. $18 million for a single season would be the highest price tag the Orioles have ever paid a player under Mike Elias. They haven't signed a free agent to any deal like that. They haven't inherited any contracts like that since Mike Elias became GM in November of 2018. Now, $18 million isn't a whole lot. It's not breaking the bank, but it beats Corbin Burns' $15.6 million that he's getting this season, which he got in arbitration in the deal that they acquired him for a couple months ago. That is a lot of money to be inheriting, at least relative to what Mike Elias has done in the past, but it's not a whole lot of money relative to what starting pitchers, and especially good starting pitchers, are paid on the free agent market. This move in acquiring Zach Eflin from the Rays checks 2 major boxes. One, it gets the Orioles a potential Game 3 starter, and I do think that if he is healthy enough to be pitching in October, and there's no reason to believe he shouldn't be because he's been healthy this season, Zach Eflin is good enough to start Game 3 of a playoff series. Behind Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez, you feel good about throwing Zach Eflin on the mound for a Game 3, especially a whole lot better than you felt at this point last year, having to throw Dean Kramer in Game 3 in Texas. That was not an ideal situation. Of course, the Orioles didn't want to be down 0-2 in that situation, but to throw Kramer in that Game 3 meant that the series had tilted, the momentum at least, had tilted significantly in Texas's way. If you have Corbin Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, and Zach Eflin as your 1-2-3 punch in a playoff series in October, you have to feel very good about those 3 starting pitchers. The other box that it checks for the Orioles is getting a starter under team control through 2025, because this Orioles rotation is going to look a heck of a lot different next season. John Means is going to be a free agent recovering from Tommy John. Corbin Burns is a free agent. Orioles could and probably should try to get him back, but he's going to have a hefty price tag, and there's no guarantee that the Orioles are going to be able to outbid anybody for his services. You're bringing back Dean Kramer. Tyler Wells is still recovering from Tommy John surgery. Don't know when you're going to get him back. You have Cade Povich as somebody who would be an intriguing young left-handed pitcher. Chase McDermott, an intriguing young right-handed pitcher who just made his big league debut. You have maybe Cole Irvin thrown in there. Albert Suarez probably won't be back considering his age. You don't feel great about a starting five, a starting rotation without adding somebody. The Orioles getting Zach Eflin gets a little bit of their offseason work done early. They could still and probably should still in a few months get another starting pitcher. But now that you have Zach Eflin in the building under team control through 2025, that solidifies your rotation at least with a little bit of a veteran presence. He adds something to that rotation, which you did not have before. And he's good enough to pitch for the latter 2 months of the season consistently every fifth or sixth day in this rotation and pitch in the playoffs. Now, what the Orioles gave up in this deal, 3 prospects, 3 recently drafted prospects. Righty Jackson Baumeister, infielder Mac Horvath, and outfielder Matthew Etzel. Now, Baumeister, number 17 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline in the Orioles system. He just turned 22 years old, second round pick in 2023. He was the highest drafted pitcher of the Mike Elias era, a 3.06 ERA and 18 starts with high A Aberdeen and almost 12 strikeouts per 9. He was off to a very, very good start to his pro career, and he was making good on the Orioles' bet to draft a pitcher early. Mac Horvath, the Orioles' number 10 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, he just turned 23. Now, he hasn't had the same kind of excellent start numbers-wise that Jackson Baumeister has to his big league or to his pro career. He's hitting .233 with 9 homers, but he has speed on the base paths and he has a little bit of pop. Those 9 homers, 26 stolen bases, a 745 OPS. That was the book on him coming out of college when the Orioles drafted him. And so he is in this deal as well. And finally, Matthew Etzel, who is not ranked in the Orioles' top 30, according to MLB Pipeline. But if I had to guess, I think he would be in their top 30 when they are to release their midseason rankings, because he has had an outstanding start to his pro career. He's already in Double-A Bowie, hitting .289 with an 809 OPS in 83 games between High A Aberdeen and Double-A Bowie. Another insane speedster on the base paths, along with Horvath, along with Enrique Bradfield Jr., who was the first-round pick in that draft. Already has 41 stolen bases in those 83 games. So he was somebody who was a quick riser, already at Double-A, and probably would have been a top 30 prospect if the Orioles had held on to him, and probably will be in the Rays' top 30 prospects. So Baumeister, Horvath, and Etzel are all sent to the Rays. But my takeaway after seeing the return that the Orioles gave up for Zach Eflin, they didn't have to give up any of their top 9 prospects. They didn't have to give up anybody who was in AAA. They didn't have to give up Connor Norby. They didn't have to give up Kyle Stowers, Samuel Basallo, Jackson Holliday, Heston Kjerstad. All of those guys are still in the building. Even Enrique Bradfield Jr., their first-round pick from a year ago. All of these guys are still here. The Orioles didn't have to deal anybody in order to get a starting pitcher. Now, Zach Eflin isn't the level of pitcher that Tarek Skubal is or another ace, but he's a good enough pitcher to pitch in the playoffs. The Orioles got that guy without having to give up one of their top 9 prospects, or at least somebody who's in the big leagues or close to the big leagues. Norby is playing in the game tonight. He's starting in this game. If you were to trade Norby, you'd be robbing from your big league team. Same with Heston Kjerstad, already at the big league level. Kyle Stowers in AAA, but could be right back in Baltimore before you know it. So the Orioles didn't rob from their current team. Probably didn't even rob from their 2025 team. These guys were years away. Baumeister, Horvath, Etzel, probably at least a year or 2 away from the big leagues. That's the benefit of having a deep system like the Orioles have, is that they can deal 3 prospects, 3 coveted prospects around baseball, and still not feel an impact in 2024 and maybe not even 2025. So that's a heck of a return that the Orioles got for those 3 prospects in Zach Eflin. And my overall thoughts on this deal, Last summer, we saw the Orioles make moves at the deadline. They traded for Jack Flaherty from the St. Louis Cardinals. They traded for Shintaro Fujinami from the Oakland A's. They got a starter. They got a reliever. So far at this deadline, there's still days to go, but so far they have gotten a starter in Zach Eflin. They have gotten a reliever in Seranthony Dominguez, but these are much better players than Jack Flaherty and Shintaro Fujinami were at this point last year. The Orioles are taking bigger swings. They are trying to get players who are going to impact their postseason chances and their postseason roster much more than Jack Flaherty and Shintaro Fujinami did. Those guys combined to provide one postseason inning last year. Shintaro Fujinami did not make the postseason roster, was not on the ALDS roster for the Orioles in 2023. And Jack Flaherty was a reliever in the Orioles postseason. So those two guys were non-factors in the Orioles playoff run last year. The Orioles are hoping that Zach Eflin and that Seranthony Dominguez provide a much, much bigger impact than those two guys did last year. And I think it's a good bet. I think there's a good chance that Seranthony Dominguez pitches some high leverage innings for the Orioles over the next couple months, and he should make the postseason roster if all goes well. And like I said, Zach Eflin should be the Orioles' Game 3 starter. I touched on the acquisition of Seranthony Dominguez earlier today in the podcast. You can go back and listen to. I had Andy Koska and Kyle Goon of the Baltimore Banner on with me. We talked a lot about trading Austin Hayes and what it meant to that clubhouse that the Orioles dealt away a veteran. And that's something that members of the Orioles' current roster talked about today, pregame, with members of the media. Colton Cowser spoke about it. He talked about missing the kind of leader that Austin Hayes is, both on and off the field. He talked about learning a lot from Austin Hayes, how to play that left field, that gargantuan left field at Camden Yards. Austin Hayes was somebody that the Orioles' young players looked up to, and that is something that will be missing from the Orioles clubhouse. What the Orioles got back, however, is certainly exciting in Seranthony Dominguez. He doesn't solve all their bullpen problems, but he certainly should be able to help because this is a bullpen that is beleaguered right now. Craig Kimbrell has faced his struggles. Seranthony Dominguez is not going to take the closer role from Craig Kimbrell as much as I've seen people talk about Seranthony's experience as a closer. He hasn't been a closer in several years. I don't think by any means Seranthony Dominguez is going to be closing games unless they absolutely need him to do so. But he slots in behind some of their higher leverage relievers. You know, Jacob Webb, certainly, Yennier Cano. You don't have too many high leverage guys that you feel great about right now. Cionel Perez is a lefty. Dylan Tate isn't with the big league team right now. Seranthony Dominguez should alleviate that problem. I still think the Orioles could go out and get another reliever at this deadline, and they have several days with which to do so. But he certainly should help alleviate the burden that has been placed on the Orioles' high leverage relievers. And the acquisition of Zach Eflin should create somewhat of a domino effect. You could see guys maybe move from a starter role to a bullpen role. I think of Albert Suarez, probably not a high leverage reliever for the Orioles over the final 2 months of the season, but could be a nice long reliever for Brandon Hyde to utilize. So there are ways in which the Orioles acquisitions can help both the rotation and the bullpen over the coming 2 months and hopefully in October. Still several days left before the MLB trade deadline, and Mike Elias can make more moves over the coming days. And we will have complete coverage for you on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe just $1 for 6 months. And on trade deadline day itself, we will be live for a subscriber-only event at noon on Tuesday, July 30th. Myself, Andy Koska, Danielle Allentuck, John Mioli, and Kyle Goon will have you completely covered for that subscriber-only event, breaking down all the moves that have already happened, all the moves that will be happening live. I'm sure there will be some moves made that day. The deadline is until 6 o'clock, but you never know. And all the moves that could be coming over the following 6 hours. So still, the Orioles have a chance to add to their roster. By no means does this mean that they are done, but it is a busy day transaction-wise and an exciting day for the Orioles acquiring Seranthony Dominguez, Christian Pache, Zach Eflin, sending out Austin Hayes, and 3 young prospects. Let us know what you think of the Orioles' move so far. Give us a like, give us a comment, write us a good review of the Banner Baseball Show, and I will read it out here on the show. That's a guarantee that I am making here. Share it with all your friends. And of course, as Ravens training camp is heating up, by the way, we do have the Banner Ravens podcast. So tune into that as well as myself and Jonah Schaefer get you ready for the start of the NFL season. Thanks so much for tuning in. And of course, subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, just $1 for 6 months. We've got a game, folks, in about an hour's time. We will have coverage of that, as well as Danielle and Kyle and Andy and John are all at the ballpark, are all at Camden Yards tonight. So we have you covered from every angle tonight as well.